I still remember the moment like it just happened. I was standing by the office coffee machine, adding a splash of oat milk to my morning brew, when Ryan, the new CEO and son of the company's founder, walked into the break room. He didn't greet me, didn't smile, just stared at me like I was part of the furniture. Without warning, he barked out, "Lily, I need to see you in my office." Now, it wasn't a request. I had been with the company nearly 11 years. In that time, I'd built the client services department from the ground up, negotiated over 100 contracts, and trained most of the team, now sitting just outside his office. But none of that meant anything to Ryan. His father, Mr. Cole, had built the company on grit and loyalty. Ryan had inherited the title and clearly believed that entitled him to play God. I followed him, trying to shrug off the tight knot forming in my chest. He didn't even sit down. "You're fired," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "We don't need lazy people like you dragging this place down." I blinked. At first, I thought it was some cruel joke. "Excuse me." "You heard me," he replied, flipping through papers like he was picking a lunch order. "Collect your things. You're done. Effective immediately." I stared, stunned. My heart thundered in my ears. I wanted to yell, to defend myself, to demand a reason. Instead, I smiled, a calm, polite, purposeful smile. "Understood," I said. "Have a nice day, Ryan." I walked out with my head high. Inside, I was shaking. My teammates looked up as I passed. Some started to rise, ready to ask what happened. But I gave them a slight shake of the head. "Don't make this harder." I packed in silence. Driving home, memories rushed in. 11 years. I'd given this company more time than I'd given my family. Late nights, holiday hours, client calls through tears after my divorce. I gave them everything. And now, I was discarded like nothing. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious. Why? That question haunted me all night. I barely slept. Something about Ryan's confidence, his cold indifference, didn't sit right. The timing, too, it was off. We were days away from sealing one of the company's biggest contracts, a deal I had spent 6 months nurturing. I knew that client inside and out. I had booked the final review meeting for that Friday. And now I was gone. Had he even read the contract? The next morning, just after 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, afraid to face more fallout. But curiosity won. "Lily, it's Mr. Cole." The voice hit me like a jolt. The real CEO. The man who hired me 11 years ago after one interview. "I just walked into the office," he said. I could hear the tension in his voice. "Why the hell did you pack up and leave?" "What happened?" I hesitated. "Your son fired me." Silence. Then a sharp breath. "What?" "Yesterday. He said I was lazy and not needed anymore." There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was slower, trying to stay level. "Lily, did he read your contract?" I frowned. "What do you mean? He's supposed to finalize the Kingswell deal today, right?" "Yes." The meeting was set for 11. Jesus Christ. I heard papers shuffling. A thump followed, like he'd slammed something down. "Lily, your contract has a clause," he said. "One I made sure to include after the last acquisition mess. You're not just the account manager. You're the only authorized negotiator for the Kingswell deal." I froze. "He couldn't close the deal without me," Mr. Cole continued. Not legally, not ethically, not even practically. That contract will collapse without you. A slow realization crept into my chest. He hadn't read it. Ryan had no clue what he'd done. And suddenly, something shifted inside me. The betrayal still hurt. But now I felt something else control. He had pulled the trigger too fast. And now the gun was aimed at him. Mr. Cole hung up without another word. His silence screamed louder than any shout. I sat motionless in my apartment, coffee cold beside me, staring at nothing. He didn't know. His own son had fired me without even checking the contract. I leaned back and let out a bitter laugh. After 11 years, this was how it ended, brought down by a spoiled, impulsive man-child trying to play CEO. But companies don't recover from bad calls like video games. And this one was about to learn that. I didn't know what I'd do next. Part of me wanted to show up and watch it all unravel. But another part, the part that had swallowed pride and worked thanklessly for years, wanted to let it burn. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:13 a.m., my phone rang again. Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call. Reception. Then legal. Then accounting. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. I didn't answer a single one. The voicemail icon blinked. I tapped it. Lily. Hi. It's Ryan. His voice was strained. Listen, there was a misunderstanding yesterday. I might have acted a little too quickly. We need you back. Today. It's urgent. Please call me. Urgent. The word rolled in my head like a marble in glass. He hadn't said sorry. Not once. Not even in that fake corporate way. Just panic, dressed up as politeness. I sipped my cold coffee, still unmoved. At 10:32, another buzz. A number I hadn't saved in years. Nicole, a former colleague. We'd been close back when she was still in my department. I answered. Lily, you won't believe what's happening, she whispered. Try me. Ryan just got chewed out by his dad. Like, in front of everyone. Meeting room was packed. Mr. Cole walked in and slammed the Kingswell contract on the table. I raised an eyebrow. He brought the contract? Oh yeah. And asked one question. Did you read this before firing Lily? Ryan tried to bluff. Mumbled something about new direction and reevaluating roles. But Mr. Cole wasn't buying it. He flipped right to the clause. You know, the one you always talked about. That you're the sole negotiator on Kingswell. That clause was there for a reason. I know. Everyone knows. Except Ryan. She paused. I could hear office murmurs behind her. Lily. He looked pale. Like, ghost pale. He realized he's the reason Kingswell's about to walk. I exhaled slowly. What did Mr. Cole say? He told him if the steel falls through, your position here becomes negotiable. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. There it was, the first crack in Ryan's armor. I don't know what you're planning, Nicole added, but whatever it is, you have the upper hand now. I ended the call with a soft thank you, then stood and looked out the window. The skyline was quiet still. I always found comfort in that, the city, indifferent to human chaos, going on as usual. At 11:15, another message came through, this time from Mr. Cole himself. Lily, I'm sincerely sorry for what happened. I misjudged the situation. Please come in, not just for the deal, but so we can talk privately. It was tempting, but I wasn't ready to just walk back in like nothing happened. Not yet. Ryan's mistake wasn't just about a contract. It was about respect, about trust, and about the years I had given, years that couldn't be replaced by a panicked phone call and a seat at a negotiation table. Still, something stirred inside me. I wasn't a petty person, but I wasn't weak either. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. I picked up my phone and finally responded, not with a call, but a message. I'll consider returning to finalize the Kingswell deal, but only under specific conditions. I'd like to speak with Mr. Cole directly beforehand. I hit send. Then I changed out of my pajamas and began to prepare. By the time I arrived at the office, it was just past noon. I didn't use the employee entrance. I walked through the main lobby like a guest, a move I knew would draw attention. Everyone knew I had been fired the day before. My return now was more than a quiet comeback, it was a statement. The receptionist stood up the moment she saw me. "Miss Harris, Lily," she stammered. "Mr. Cole is expecting you. Right this way." As I followed her down the hall, I noticed the atmosphere had changed. People looked up from their desks. Conversations paused. There was a sense of quiet tension, like the building itself was holding its breath. Mr. Cole was standing at the door to his office when I arrived. He wasn't smiling. "Lily," he said, nodding. "Thank you for coming in." I nodded back, but didn't extend my hand. He stepped aside, letting me walk past him into the office. It was quiet for a moment as I took a seat across from his massive oak desk. He closed the door behind him, leaned against it, and let out a long sigh. "I made a mistake," he began. "A big one. I gave my son too much authority too fast. I wanted him to prove himself, but I didn't expect him to burn bridges before even learning how to build them." I stayed silent. He sat down. His voice softened. "What he did to you was unprofessional, disrespectful, and frankly, it jeopardized a deal we've worked over half a year to secure." I nodded slowly. "Yes, it did. I read the contract again this morning. Every word. You were given full autonomy over the Kingswell account. Legally, the client won't recognize anyone else as a representative of this company during negotiations. That clause was put in place after the Steel Ridge debacle. I remember it well." There was a long pause before he answered. "Because I needed to see how far he'd go." He sounded tired, more like a father than a CEO. "You're protecting the company," I said. He shook his head slowly. "I'm trying to protect both of you, but maybe it's too late for one of you." I closed the folder. "I don't need protection. I need you to decide what kind of legacy you want to leave behind." His eyes lingered on mine. Then he turned and left. And I knew something bigger was coming. The office felt colder that week, not from the weather, but because the air between people had shifted. Conversations dropped to whispers when I passed. Some employees smiled at me. Others avoided eye contact entirely. The internal audit had started. Everyone knew it. People were nervous. So was I. I hadn't asked Mr. Cole to launch the audit, but deep down, I was relieved he had. I needed the truth out, not just for me, but for everyone who'd been walking on eggshells since Ryan took over. Still, I knew how corporate games worked. Truth didn't always bring justice. Sometimes it brought quiet exits and golden handshakes. Sometimes it got buried so deep under red tape that the damage became permanent. That Thursday, I was summoned to the audit committee's temporary office, a former storage room turned war room. Files were stacked high on tables, monitors glowed with data, and a whiteboard brimmed with timelines and digital breadcrumbs. David, the lead internal auditor, greeted me. "Lily, thanks for coming. We'd like to ask a few questions about recent irregularities." I nodded and then sat down. He pulled up a file on the screen. "So do I said quietly. I was the one who managed the fallout. His eyes met mine. "You didn't deserve what happened yesterday," he said. "And I'd like to offer you your job back with full authority to finish the deal. Whatever conditions you need, we'll make them work." There was sincerity in his tone. Regret too. But this wasn't just about the deal. It was about leadership, accountability, dignity. "I'll return," I said. "But I want everything in writing, a revised contract, clear autonomy over Kingswell, and no interference from Ryan." He nodded immediately. "Done. And one more thing," I added, voice firm. "This can't happen again. Not to me. Not to anyone." A long silence followed. Then he gave me a slow, thoughtful nod. "You have my word." With that, I stood. The moment I stepped out of his office, I could see Ryan standing down the hall, arms crossed, pretending to be deep in conversation with the junior executive. But his eyes locked on mine the second I appeared. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I walked straight past him, and I swear, for a second, I saw the exact moment he realized his control was slipping. By 1 p.m., the boardroom was ready. The Kingswell team had just arrived, and we had about 30 minutes before the official meeting. I reviewed the documents one last time, confirming all the points we had previously negotiated. Their CEO, Mr. S., was a no-nonsense man with sharp instincts. He valued trust above all, and any whiff of internal disorganization would send him running. As I placed the printed Arab translation of the final terms onto the table, I caught sight of Ryan pacing outside the glass walls of the meeting room like a caged animal. Mr. Cole stepped out to intercept him. Their muffled voices escalated quickly until Mr. Cole's hand shot up, silencing him. Ryan's face turned crimson. He looked over his shoulder at me with a mix of rage and humiliation. Then he walked away. That was the last time I saw him that day. At 1:30 sharp, Mr. S. entered with his aides. I greeted him in Arabic, and his eyes lit up. He smiled, a rare gesture from him. "You remembered," he said warmly. "Respect goes a long way." The meeting began. It went flawlessly. 2 hours later, we shook hands and signed the deal. After they left, Mr. Cole approached me again. This time, his face showed genuine relief. "You saved us," he said, "and I owe you more than an apology." "You owe your company a leader," I replied, "one who knows the difference between power and responsibility." He didn't argue. Later that evening, as I walked to my car, the tension I'd carried for the past 48 hours finally began to lift. I had come back, not as an employee, but as someone who understood her value and demanded it be recognized. But I also knew this wasn't over. Ryan might have been quiet today, but men like him don't disappear. They retreat. And then they retaliate. By the following week, the Kingswell deal had made headlines in our industry newsletter. A breakthrough in cross-border negotiations, it read. Cole & Company secures a historic partnership with Middle Eastern distributor through tailored strategy and multilingual leadership. They didn't mention me by name, but everyone in the company knew who had sealed that deal. My inbox was flooded with quiet congratulations, internal messages from staff who had stayed silent during the storm. Some were from juniors I'd mentored years ago. Others were from managers who had once ignored me in meetings, but now praised my leadership under pressure. I welcomed their words, but I wasn't naive. I knew how fast people changed when the wind shifted. The atmosphere in the office had brightened. There were smiles, laughter again in the break room. Mr. Cole had made it clear that Ryan was no longer part of high-level decision-making until further notice. And yet, I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. Small things began to occur. First, it was the expense reports. My reimbursement for the Kingswell meeting travel was delayed. Then, documents I'd submitted for approval came back unsigned, with no explanation. After that, an email I never sent, allegedly from my account, was flagged by IT. It contained inaccurate client information and had been forwarded to one of our overseas partners. Fortunately, the partner was someone I had a strong relationship with, and he reached out directly for clarification. But the mistake had already cast doubt. I reported it to our internal systems team. They found no signs of external hacking. The email had originated from inside the office. That's when I knew Ryan was behind it. He wasn't trying to fire me anymore. That tactic had failed. Now, he wanted to make me seem incompetent, to slowly tarnish my reputation until I either quit from frustration or someone else labeled me a liability. It was classic corporate sabotage. And it wasn't new to me. At my first job, right out of university, I'd worked under a director who played the same game. He wouldn't confront you directly. Instead, he'd cut off your resources, isolate you from projects, and quietly poison your name until the only option left was to disappear. But I wasn't 22 anymore. I wasn't going to disappear. I documented everything, every missed email, every mistake I hadn't made, every unexplained delay. I had learned the hard way that in places like this, paper trails held more power than emotions. I even started using a private notebook, logging times, dates, conversations, just in case. Then, one afternoon, I overheard something that confirmed my suspicions. I was walking past the conference room when I heard Ryan's voice, too loud for a private meeting. "She's unstable," he said. "Since she came back, she's been erratic, aggressive. I don't think she's fit to manage high-pressure clients." I stopped in my tracks. "I'm just saying," he went on, "maybe we should start thinking about succession planning for client services. She's clearly overextended." Another voice answered, someone I didn't recognize. Likely a newer executive. "Maybe," they said. "But the Kingswell deal, she pulled that off under serious pressure." Ryan scoffed. "She got lucky." "We can't run a company on luck." I stood frozen, then quietly walked away. My blood ran cold, not from fear, but from the chilling precision of his tactics. He was planting seeds again, poisoning the well. That evening, I stayed late. The office was quiet, the halls dim. I sat alone in the glass meeting room, staring out at the city lights, wondering how many more battles I'd have to fight just to do my job. Then a voice broke the silence. "Still here?" I looked up. It was Mr. Cole. "I could ask you the same," I replied. He stepped in and placed a folder on the table. "Your revised contract. Everything we agreed on." I opened it and read through the language. It was solid. I nodded in approval. "I've also initiated an internal audit," he added. "Too many things have been misfiled lately." I looked up sharply. He met my eyes. "I'm not blind, Lily. I know Ryan isn't finished. Why haven't you stopped him?" I asked. "Verse this email. It looked like it came from your account. We've confirmed it was sent from a shared workstation near the break room. The credentials were manually entered. So someone used my login?" He shook his head. "No, someone had your credentials. They copied them, most likely. This wasn't phishing." It was internal. I folded my arms. I reported that the day it happened. He gave a tight smile. Yes. And we're glad you did. We've found a few others, emails rewritten, spreadsheets altered, sign-offs removed. Always traced back to shared machines. Always under your name. The weight in my chest grew heavier. This was coordinated, I said. David hesitated. Yes. And we've narrowed the list of who had access. We also noticed unusual activity tied to Ryan's executive assistant's login. I sat still. He continued carefully. We're not accusing anyone yet, but there's a clear pattern. Sabotage, meant to discredit you. Possibly others. I clenched my jaw. So what happens now? That's where it gets complicated, he said. Mr. Cole asked us to present everything directly to him. No filters. I nodded slowly. Then I'll be there. David raised his eyebrows. You're not required. I will be there, I repeated. If this is coming to light, I want to look everyone in the eye. He didn't argue. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the others who had left quietly this past year, talented people in their 30s and 40s who had moved on without much notice. People once seen as rising stars. I used to think it was just turnover. Now I wondered, how many had Ryan quietly pushed out? I arrived early to the executive boardroom the next morning. Mr. Cole was already there, staring out the window like a man waiting for the final card to fall. David and 2 other auditors came in next. Then Ryan arrived, 10 minutes late, looking smug, phone in hand, not a trace of concern on his face. Until he saw me. He paused at the door. She's not on the audit committee. Mr. Cole didn't turn. She's here at my request. Ryan shifted his weight uncomfortably. This is supposed to be internal. Confidential. Then you should have kept it that way when you used company resources to fabricate emails, I said, my voice calm but sharp. Ryan scoffed. That's ridiculous. David spoke up. We've traced multiple login attempts tied to your assistant account, all connected to irregularities targeting Lily's work. There's a clear timeline. Ryan's face began to shift, his practiced smugness cracking. You're reaching. She's just bitter about being let go. I looked him in the eye. You didn't let me go, Ryan. You sabotaged me, and you almost tanked the biggest deal this company has landed in 5 years. Mr. Cole finally turned. I gave you a chance, he said quietly. I gave you more than one. And you've done nothing but tear down the people trying to build something real here. Ryan's bravado faltered. This isn't what you think. No, Mr. Cole cut in. It's worse. A heavy silence filled the room. Then Mr. Cole stood. The board will be reviewing this report. Until then, you are suspended, effective immediately. Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but the words never came. He looked at me one last time, this time not with rage, but with disbelief, like he had finally realized that none of his usual tricks were going to save him now. He walked out in silence. I stayed behind. Mr. Cole exhaled, his shoulders sagging. I failed him, he said, as a leader, and maybe as a father. You can't lead someone who refuses to grow, I said quietly. But you can lead the company. You still have that choice. He looked at me, then nodded. And for the first time since this all began, I felt the weight start to lift. 2 weeks had passed since the audit meeting, but the impact of that morning still echoed through every corner of the building. Ryan hadn't returned, and the once proud smirk he carried like a badge was now the stuff of whispered office gossip. The board moved quickly. The evidence was too strong, too detailed, too damning to ignore. The falsified emails, the login traces, the unexplained disappearance of files, the attempt to weaponize HR complaints, all under Ryan's direction or through people he manipulated. When the final report came out, it was clear Ryan hadn't just tried to sabotage me. He had compromised the integrity of the company itself. His suspension became a termination. The official announcement cited breaches of ethical conduct and internal misconduct. No lawsuits. No press release. Just a quiet exit through the back door of corporate history. But word spread anyway. I thought I'd feel triumphant when I heard the news. Instead, I felt calm. Not victorious, just steady. Like I had weathered the storm, and now I could finally breathe. A few days later, Mr. Cole called me into his office. Closed the door. I did, he said. He sat at his desk, a folder in front of him, but he didn't open it yet. I've spent a lot of time thinking about everything that's happened, he began, and what I want this company to be moving forward. I didn't speak. I let him finish. You've shown more leadership in the past month than most executives show in a career. You protected our biggest deal, held your composure in a public humiliation, and navigated personal attacks with professionalism. That's the kind of person I want helping run this company. He slid the folder across the desk. Inside was a promotion letter. Director of Client Strategy. An executive-level role, one that reported directly to him. I looked up, startled. I didn't ask for this. I know, he said. That's why you deserve it. I hesitated, then gave him a small nod. If I accept this, I want a say in how we move forward. I don't want to just hold a title. I want to rebuild this culture the right way. He smiled. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Later that evening, as I sat alone in my new office, a temporary one while renovations were underway, I stared at the blank nameplate on the door. For years, I'd walked these halls wondering if anyone really saw the work I did. The late nights, the client saves, the fires I put out without a single word of credit. I thought staying quiet was the best way to keep peace, to not cause friction. But silence had almost cost me everything. It wasn't just about a contract or a position. It was about remembering that competence is not arrogance and professionalism is not weakness. I had been underestimated, dismissed, sabotaged, but I had never been defeated, and I hadn't let myself become bitter in the process. That, to me, was the real win. In the weeks that followed, I started reshaping the department. I reopened lines of communication. I reinstated people who had been pushed out unfairly. I created an anonymous reporting system so no one else had to fear retaliation for speaking up. I even made time for the younger employees who were just starting out, some of whom had witnessed what I went through and quietly asked how I stayed strong. I told them the truth. You don't always get to pick the battles, I said. But you do get to decide who you become in the middle of them. As for Ryan, last I heard, he was interviewing at smaller firms out of state, but his reputation had caught up to him. Some said Mr. Cole pulled strings to make sure his name didn't get dragged publicly. Maybe that was a father's last act of love. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. One afternoon, while walking through the office, I passed the glass wall that once housed the Kingswell negotiation. I paused for a moment, remembering everything: the sabotage, the call, the panic, the eventual triumph. That single deal had changed the course of my career. But the real shift happened the moment I smiled at Ryan and walked out of his office, refusing to beg. That was the turning point, not because I gave up, but because I knew what I was worth. And I refused to let anyone, boss's son or not, take that from me again.